Hey, welcome to Live for Lunch. We're coming at you live. It's Friday, January. No, it's not January. It's February now, isn't it? What's the date today?
February 10th. You know,
February 10th.
I was thinking about that. And with February 10th, 2012, I started thinking countdown. Countdown to what? You know,
to the big change, which is December 21st, right?
I am getting tired of this countdown and all this angst. I suggest we begin a count up.
Okay. How does that work?
We count up to, let's say, 100.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things also is, you know, we're all living longer and we want to have a quality of life, and you know, we've had the, you know, boomers and zoomers and X's and all of these different generations, and segmenting them all into 10-year periods or 15-year periods. It's like, why all this work and catch up and fragmentation? You know, why can't we all just be centenarians or half centenarians or quarter centenarians? So and like, you know, quarter cents and half cents. So I'm a half cent.
Okay.
And that's sort of a counting up. And I have some things to look forward to here to see what unfolds in the next period.
Well, it's going to be pretty exciting. But I'm still thinking we should count down. I really think something's going to happen December 21st.
Okay. You count down, I'm going to count up.
Well, then we can start counting up from there. If
I'm starting now. Okay.
We can start counting up. But
right.
I mean, you've already raised some interesting points that we could probably talk all day about, and maybe we'll get a chance to, because we've got a bunch of great guests on the show today.
Help us think this through. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So we're going to just, before we get into our first guest, just to let people know, we've got Andrew Greig coming on the show. He's the founder of Vizico.
Yes.
And do you want to say what that is? They've got an agreement with Google.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty
phenomenal.
cool.
It's sort of the only global reseller in the world. And what they're looking to do in terms of creating a co-op, not only for shareholders, and not only for customers and stakeholders, but essentially for the whole planet, is so exciting. I can't wait for Andrew to tell you more about it.
It is exciting, and the whole idea of a co-op is very interesting. I know a little bit about it, having served on the board of co-ops.
Yes.
They have their own issues. But
yours was a banking or a credit union?
Yeah, it was a credit union.
Yeah, so working with money, that's even more interesting.
It was interesting. Yes, it was.
Exciting?
Not that exciting.
May we live in interesting times, the old Chinese curse.
Well, here we are. We're in interesting times. So anyways, we're going to find out.
Exciting times is the new model.
Fabulous. So we're going to speak to Andrew. We're going to find out about Vizico, what that means, and that will be exciting. Also, we've got Stephanie Titus-Andrews coming in. She is an author, and she helps people who are trying to escape from bad relationships, and which is noble work. Also, Brendan O'Farrell will be coming in. That channel's political correspondent towards the end of the show.
Yes.
But we're going to start off with Norman Evans, who has so much that we can talk about. I don't know where to start, Norman, but welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Norman. Thank you.
I would like to start actually where you started, because it's interesting you should choose the notion of a countdown or a count up. In 1997, I registered a URL called DigitalCitizen.com, and
I love that name.
Thank you.
Digital Citizen.
And because it has some significance, I believe, to what's happening in the world today. And what's happening from back then, having come from an analog world and having been trained in the art of printing from my father, who started a printing business in 1936. And in 1966, at the ripe old age of 16, I became an apprentice printer. I became an apprentice compositor. So when I came to this country, I knew about fonts and typography and all of these wonderful things that on reading Steve Jobs' book, I realized how inspirational that concept of design and form and function was important to the tools, the development of the tools. So the reason for us declaring a countdown on I think April 1997, if I remember, it was 1,000 days to the year 2000.
Yes.
And my thesis was predicated on the notion that not only were we moving from an analog, convergent model where all media was emerging, that it was becoming converged into a singular pipe that was the internet. And I started off my conversation by saying that the internet was actually the electricity of the 21st century. Now, if you go back 100 years to the 1900s, when the first electricity came in, then it wasn't until the applications were developed did electricity have any real significance. And then electricity disappeared, and now you don't walk into the room and say, "Oh, there's light in the room. Excellent. You've got electricity in the room." You don't do that. You go in, you say, "Let's do our work and let's be illuminated."
Yeah. It's an assumed infrastructure. And 100 years ago, if someone had said internet, it didn't exist.
Well, it didn't exist.
And the concept or context, it couldn't even be imagined.
It's actually fascinating to see how these things are revealed through time, and it's an unfolding, and the unfolding is quite clear in hindsight, as you can see. So a paradigm as simple as a graphical user interface is so obvious to us now, but having been intimately involved in the development of these tools through the years, and had the privilege of working under non-disclosure behind the scenes in the creation of some of these products, having worked with Apple in the early 80s, having worked in the Unix business, which was the precursor to all of this. Without the Unix operating system, you wouldn't be able to have the capability of porting different applications across different platforms. And then, oftentimes I'm asked, what's the difference between character and GUI? What is GUI? And I spell PINKELEPHANT, which is quite appropriate for a liquid lunch meeting. But can anybody hazard what does PINKELEPHANT mean?
Pink elephant.
Correct. So, but in a GUI world, all you would need is a pink elephant, and you would see it, and you wouldn't have to spell it out and think about it. And that to me is the important thing. However, I declared in 1997, at the countdown point, that that time was being redefined, and our relationship and our working ability within it would change, and that actually that the year was going to become 100-day year. It would be 100-day year. So that every 1,000, so it was actually 10 web years, 1,000 days from 2001.
Fascinating.
Well, see, that reminds me of the metric time system, except in those metric time, the year is 1,000 days and the months are 100 days. That way we're all a lot younger.
Right. I can see that too.
Oh, plus New Year's isn't always in the middle of the winter, which could be nice.
Well, in 1976, for instance, I wrote I started writing the book on the notion that I was a 1947 boomer.
Yes.
That I was a 1947 model. And then I started looking at what did that mean. So it was a reference point. So you could see that in 1947, 57, 67, 87, all of the different events that occurred around that. So in my generation, you could say to somebody, what happened in the 22nd of November, 1963? What happened?
Kennedy got shot.
Right. But if you asked another generation right now what happened, then they might not have the reference point. Or if I quoted a Bob Dylan line, they might look at me vaguely. If I had my iPhone, I would say that in 2000, in the year 2000, 2001, when Kubrick brought out the movie, he brought it out in 1969, which is quite appropriate because that was the year we went to the moon. So the time, and if you remember that film, 2001, do you remember all of the monolith?
Yeah.
Well, this is the monolith. And we are the monkeys all standing around looking at the monolith. And this has been the extension of the monolith. So that was 69. So with respect to time has, according to Moore's law, states that every 18 months the power of the microprocessor will double in size and will increase double in size and half in price, which we've seen. And the metaphor of using the airline engine, if the airline engines had kept up with the same pace, you'd be able to fly to New York in 3 minutes for 25 cents. But it hasn't quite worked that way. However, the 100-day concept is that idea that 365 days is now 100 days. Now, I'm a survivor of a heart attack. I had a heart attack when I was 40 years old. I had 100% blocked right coronary artery. It was the very same year that I won the Microsoft account using a process and methodology which I call Plan the Work, Work the Plan, which I published a book on. Now, that process allowed me to start redefining the notion of creating value in time in the work week. Now, the work week has been a 40-hour sort of notion for a long time. With the advent of these new tools, then it becomes almost a 24/7 work week if you don't take control of your time. Now, I was fortunate, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, I was very fortunate to find a homeopath who weaned me off all medication. I reversed heart disease without surgery, and I started challenging my own belief systems and said, no, just because I believe them doesn't mean they're correct. And then I came up with the notion that at that time there was 5 billion people in the world, all in an emergency state, and they were worrying about the 5 billion people in the world were trying to redefine their how they were going to work in this. When we went to the moon, we had 5 million, or whatever it was, 2 billion people in '69. In that time, in 40 years, something strange has happened in time. My homeopath introduced me to a book, that was my point. It was called How to Earn Your Living in 4 hours a Day Without Feeling Guilty About It. So he defined the book that most people come into work, they rush in, they get there for 9 o'clock, they have a conversation, and then they put off everything until they get home, and the whole day, and they never achieve the thing. So once you understand that our only purpose is actually to create value from a conversation, and that we don't get paid for the time. We don't get paid for 8 hours. We get paid for producing value. And if you can produce that value in 1 minute, then
you got the rest of the day off.
Correct. So, and I look through my life and I say, what decisions do I make? What decisions do we make in our lives? We make a dozen of them, maybe at best. You pick the right woman. I was fortunate enough. I married a girl who I've known since 16, and we're 41 years married. We have a wonderful life, wonderful family. Then you decide to, the first big thing you have to decide is to pick the right parents. If you pick the right parents, you're probably off to the races. If you don't pick the wrong parents, you might have a little bit of a disconnect.
So on picking the right parents, do you feel you picked the right parents?
Oh, there's undoubtedly no. I absolutely did.
Right. I have 2 questions. The first one is, who is Norm Evans? You spoke about Unix, and if I recall correctly, you were the Unix founder in Canada, and you said you had the Microsoft account, you won that. Just so that everyone understands, what's some of the milestones of your life, Norman?
Well, I started an ad agency when I was 20, and I started working with industrial advertising back then. And I had I remember the very first time I was in my father's printing shop. And it's all about paradigms. It's all about seeing and understanding what the needs of people are. And so I had a gentleman come in, and he actually said to me that he wanted to do an invitation, a menu for a retirement dinner for his company. Yes. And I asked him the magic question, what business are you in? Yes. And he said to me, he was in the brick business. And I said, bricks? And I said, that's exciting, How
did you do that, by the way? How could you hear brick business and say that's exciting?
Because that's been the raison d'etre and my purpose all my life, because I realized that everyone has a unique absolute point of view, and everyone's point of view is absolutely correct from their point of view. So my quest is, why are we so disconnected? Why is it such a disconnect? So, and then I found out that if you ask people the question, then that they're waiting to be asked. Nobody asks people what they do really, or do they care, and nobody listens to the answer and then decides, and then leads forward to the natural outcome is to identify the situation, the problem, what they would need, what they want, and then give them back what they want. So this particular person asked me, I got into the conversation about his brick business.
Yes.
So I realized that he got really excited. He went out to the car, he brought one of these bricks in, and he told me they were refractory bricks. Refractory. Right, refractory bricks. And even this, 50 years later almost, 45 years later, people still don't know what a refractory brick is necessarily. But a refractory brick, he told me, was that they were furnace linings in the manufacture of steel and glass and aluminum and so on. So he was expecting a little white menu, and when he came back, I had given him a brick-shaped menu. I found a piece of stock, manila stock, and he said to me, and I folded it into, I had the signatures on it, and I folded it into a brick shape. And he came in and he said, I'm spending £250,000, a fortune. I was earning £6 a week or something. And he was, I'm spending £250,000 with my advertising agency. And I'd never heard it in context. And you don't come up with creative like this. So within 3 months I won that account, and I was in New York doing my first trade show. So then I suddenly realized that I was on a path that every day is a trade show. And that every one of us has the opportunity to qualify, that the whole route to understanding each other is to qualify each other, to understand what each other's needs are. So that's been my quest ever since, is to be able to make it simple. And since I was one of the originators of the notion of WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get.
WYSIWYG.
What you see is what you get. I published it in a book called A Desktop Publishing Revolution in the Making, for a show I did with Apple in 1986. You see, it says WYSIWYG, what you get is what you get. But I'm in the process of redesigning a new relationship with the internet and how people interact, and it's not WYSIWYG, it's WYNIWYG. What you need is what you get. See, people don't need everything they see. They have to determine the difference.
That's a good point. Well, to me, one of the things that's happening right now with email, with Facebook, with all this new social networking stuff, the fact that people, to get more Twitter followers as part of their overall marketing, they'll, instead of, because Twitter, for example, really is, you want the tweets that you want. Right? But people subscribe to other tweeters just to bump up their own tweeters, their own followers. And to me, what that does is that just increases the noise in the system. And with email, too, with spam now, that at one time spam was just you just didn't do it. Now spam is, people use spam to market. That's just more noise in the system. And it seems to me there's a real need to come up with something. I think it should be a social network of some sort, however you define it, where it eliminates that noise and it really does give people exactly what they need when they need it. But how do we get to that point?
Well, I think that to get back to my digital citizen concept, what I realized is that not only were the tools changing, but we were changing. And I heard, I did a show in San Francisco in 1996 with Silicon Graphics and a whole bunch of other Unix people down where we launched a company called Digital Motors in 1996. I actually went on to build the first internet casino with no downloads, from that. But there was a speaker there, a good friend of mine called Dan Mapes, quite a visionary, and he made a speech. He said, "Web, web, web. We're all talking web, web, web," much like the lungfish was saying air, air, air. But and that it was just an evolution of the tools. And the fact is that we've just evolved into with these tools. So we've moved from a what I call Homo sapien world of an analog world into a Homo silicon world, where we have we're like the unconscious, like everything else in our lives, the reality of our lives, the what we see, the WYSIWYG side of our lives, is only a fraction of the whole picture. And until I don't believe people in the world truly understand why they feel the way they feel and why they behave the way they feel. They think it's an external reason. They think it's because of some situation beyond them. And they don't realize that if they had an understanding of how their operating system worked and how the GUI worked. See, we all have a graphical user interface. We didn't need this to tell us. We didn't need the iPhone to tell us. So we have the ability to invoke that if we knew how to operate it.
If, in one way you're very much like a professor, yet you actually are in the business world, which I know, and you've created and manifested many campaigns and many changes and have been visionary. So in talking about who you are, maybe you could just share with us, because we're going to be running a bit short of time here. Okay, what are the 5 things that you would like to see accomplished in this next bit of time that you will be instrumental in?
Well, the 5 things, to go back to your point, one of them would be to dumb down the internet, make it a much more manageable experience for people to get what they need.
Do you have a way to do that?
Yes, I believe I do.
Can you share yet?
Well, I can. I think that the way to do it is to create the tools that allow you to be able to live your plan your life and live your plan in a non-intrusive way.
Which of your companies is going to be delivering that?
Well, I think that ultimately it's going to be DigitalCitizen.com.
DigitalCitizen.com. All right, number 2.
And in my business world, I educate people to learn that a framework that allows them to unlock their experience, which they have. Everyone has experience. To add it, to multiply it with the infinite network of expertise that's available, in order to be able for them to function in a much more productive and easier way. In other words, if we can reduce the manual tasks in our life, focus on increasing our productivity, reduce the cost on the environment, and at the same time recognize that the individual is an ecology into themselves, and that they are the exercise machine. They have the ability to adjust their attitude just like that, and that it's attitude, not aptitude, that determines altitude.
Yes. So what would some of the tools be to do that? It sounds to me like, in a nutshell, it's refining people's experience so they learn from it better. What would one of the tools be that you offer? Well,
there's 2 tools that I've introduced over the years. One of them I use every day, and that's the whole notion of plan the work the plan, which can be found on CMN, Creative Marketing Network -news.com.
CMN-news.com.
Yes. And I do seminars, I talk to people, and I also go in on non-disclosure. I have a number of clients, different government clients, different clients that I from time to time facilitate the process. I go into situations where I don't know anything. I go in and say, you know everything. But if you don't express what it is, what your discovery agenda, meeting, creative, it's all in there. There's a model there that puts you through that process. So I've been, as I said, I published the book, I use it all of the time in the course of my business, but I also am developing a tool that will allow you, where it will sit on top of your in the cloud on your a calendar.
Yes.
Because to get you back to the calendar is probably the most important instrument that we've ever created.
That's your third product, isn't it?
And it's also the calendar is the most underutilized. The analog, the printed calendar, is the most underutilized marketing vehicle.
What's the name of your business that does that?
Well, I created a product within a product called Deskercise.
Yes.
And my brand there is Don't Wait, Do It, without the apostrophe. Don't wait, do it. And that brand, so what I did...
It has another famous acronym built right within it, doesn't it? When you showed it to me. I think it was do it, right within the don't wait, do it.
Yeah, and
with different emphasis. And what is that? Don'twaitdoit.com?
Don'twaitdoit.com. And
it's powerful.
And what I did is I introduced that to a number of to one of my clients who's in the financial services supply chain management business, and their clients were all of the banks.
Yes.
So and the banks are very sedentary lifestyle. Now they found out that people sitting at their desks are very much prone to illness. You know, if you sit longer than 2 hours, especially in airlines and so on. So I wanted to bring a stress management system that you could use anywhere you are, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. That you become it. So I ask you all in the audience here to put your hands together like that. Right. Just to put your hands together like that. Okay. And if you just feel that stretch, just feel that. That's all you have to do. Nothing else. And while you're waiting for a file to come down or something, you can just do that. I walk into the room, my grandchildren look at me and they say, land swimming. Land swimming. So the thing is you don't have to wait to go to the gym. You don't have to wait. You can stand up. You can sit down. You can stretch. You can do all of these things. And that there is going to connect your 248 moving parts and all of these pieces in a much settling way. So I produced a calendar around that notion. And here's our Don't Wait, Do It.
Yes. Oh, great.
Don't Wait, Do It, which is
.com,
embedded within it. And I've had that since the mid-80s.
And is that where you have the finger exercises?
And then these exercises are going to be published in an app in no short order, which says sitting at your desk doesn't have to be a pain.
Deskercise, very cool. I love the artwork that I saw on this. Very impressive.
We've done a number of versions of it. This is, as I said, it has been in operation in a calendar, an analog calendar, desks in banks all over the city for the past 4 years. And
I think I've seen it before.
Right, 4 different versions. So I also commissioned another good friend of mine, because the idea behind this is to invite everybody. Everyone to do their own version of this, do a little video of it. There's 12 5-second exercises in 1 minute. So 12
5 seconds, that's attainable.
12 5-second exercises, 1 minute. So if you did that every 15 minutes, every hour, every day, on the airplane sitting there. So I can see this as being a very, very powerful tool to ground people, to simplify their lives, allow that, and if they can fit that in to their health plan, their financial plan, and so on. So
what a great asset.
No, wait, is that 5 yet? Have we got to 5?
No, we've got 3, so now we have 4.
I hope one of these is going to be the internet TV thing.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
What's number 4?
Well, we've been building internet TV, localized internet TV studios, and much as well, I want to compliment you guys for such a tremendous tenacity to keep this going now since 2006. Yes.
2004 actually. We
2004. So the notion.
And that's all Hugh and Randy and just the great team here. Everyone just have created a foundation for all of this to occur.
It's a wonderful opportunity because every individual on the planet now has the ability to be discovered and published. The media, the old media by default is old media. The new media is the great unpublished and undiscovered. So in doing that. And segmenting it into the different demographics. For a long time, I've been building websites and experiences that are demographically correct. So if you're going to do an ad for a demographic, it has to be demographically correct. So notwithstanding that, the notion of these demographics. So my friend and my ex-vice president of public relations, my good friend, wrote a book called Findependence Day, and he also wrote a book called Wealthy Boomer. That's Jonathan Chevreau of the National Post. And he has a book called Findependence Day. It's actually
Findependence Day.
Findependence Day, Financial Independence Day, and it's a romantic novel. It's a financial novel, or how does he call it? A financial romance. And it's it follows a young couple in their 20s all through their life, and in each chapter has a milestone. He's marking it. That became, he also did an article recently on the notion of boomers.
Yes.
Now, a woman wrote a book called Boomers in Business recently, and he covered the book. He invited my friend Michael Morris, who has a concept called Boomers Cloud, which empowers people to become, to earn from not what they do, but from what they know. There is a referral network, and it has a system of being able to release the skills and the power and the frustrations of the boomer in order to be able to sustain the life that they need to sustain, because the system won't support the life, the pensions and so on. We see what's going on. So these are the tools. So we're working on a show, and maybe we'll have you on our show, and we're doing an ongoing internet documentary conversation, one of many, but one is called The Rise of the Boomer Entrepreneur.
Yes.
And because the boomer entrepreneur now can use this, can learn from the internet. If you know how to navigate the internet to find what you need in a clear way, then life will unfold much more pleasantly than you can imagine.
All right. So the name of this fourth company and enterprise?
Well, I have the fourth company right now. There's a website that we actually have an internet TV pilot studio in on the mountain in Hamilton.
Oh yes.
If you go to newmediastar.tv, you'll see we actually have a live to the internet shows. We had a Johnny Cash band on Friday at the weekend, and we're doing some very interesting things, and we're piloting a notion of a boomer tour where you can pick up the bus, have your attitude adjustments and your exercise and your stress management therapy, taken to a lunch in a bowling alley, end up in the theatre for some head twisting from some of the entrepreneurs and gurus and people around that have knowledge to share. So it's very exciting. It's very collaborative.
Well, we'll have to explore that. What's the fifth and final? Even though I know it's not final, but let's close off there.
What's the fifth and final?
Asset.
Well, fifth and final, is the work I do with my clients, and I said that we build strategies, we build creative strategies. Let's look at the notion of one of the major notions I have with relation to time is that everything works on a curve. It starts off in a state of decline. It starts off dependent, independent, interdependent, and then it goes down. You can see that with product cycles and life cycles and so on. Now, one of the rules in Plan the Work, Walk the Plan, the main rule is check your ego at the door. What does that mean? Well, it's a whole another conversation, but it goes back to another event in the 80s for Live Aid. The second rule is don't believe your own publicity. Now, let's look at companies like Gandalf, which was my client. They were the darling high-tech company, and it started in '69. I actually coined the phrase "I-Way" 5 years before Steve Jobs. With Gandalf, I have a campaign that did Join the I-Way. That became another company called the Asset Highway Company, and that company was recently purchased by a major financial services company, D&H, and for considerable amount of money, because it changed the way they were working from one state, from an analog repo state to a...
That was asset.net?
Asset.net.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And they were my major sponsor with the Desker Size program.
Norman, we're going to have to do this again. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Norman at DigitalCitizen.com would probably be the best one. So my name is URL Earl. Very nice to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
And hopefully we will continue this conversation either on or off the air, but we're going to take a quick break now and come back with Andrew Greig from Vizico. As Liquid Lunch continues on a Friday, we'll be right back.
Thank you, Norman.
Fabulous.
The rain came down, the rain came pouring in, setting the stage, letting the play begin. Blow, blow fatal wind, blow fatal wind, storm clouds roll by, rain rivers like sparkling gin, setting the stage, turning the page within. There's a drizzle gray rain on the roof, seeps into my soul on a wet afternoon. Oh yeah. And there's a girl, what a pity she's alone, unraveling time on this lost afternoon, uncovered my patches of blue. The moon looked down, and moonlight came creeping in, setting the stage and filling the life within. Blow, blow fatal winds, it's just what you do, time and again. Blow fatal winds, the stars fell down, headlong came hurtling in, setting the stage, letting my birth begin. Better not, forget me not, 'cause I'll always be in love with you. Oh yeah. Better not neglect me, no. Now my whole world belongs to you, and just like a summer sky, I have my patches of blue. Just like a summer sky, I have my patches. Just like a summer sky, I have have my patches of blood.
Welcome back to the show, Liquid Lunch. It's February 10th, 2012. Myself, Hugh. Hilton is here, and we're now welcoming Andrew Greig on the show, founder and CEO of Vizzico. And Andrew, great to have you on the show.
Welcome.
And I noticed you're wearing that Google Plus T-shirt, and you guys have some kind of relationship with Google. So why don't we start talking about Google Plus, because it's all the buzz right now. What, they just hit 100 million users or something like that, the fastest growing internet phenomenon of all time?
Yeah, Google Plus, when it first debuted, it really surprised Google on its uptake. Facebook took 500 and some days to be able to get to 10 million users, and it took 16 days for Google Plus to be able to get into the marketplace. And now it's approaching 100 million users right now, so it's moving very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So we're finding in the business world, a lot of businesses are trying to figure out how they're going to work with that.
Yeah. And how are you finding Google Plus? I mean, I've kind of dabbled with it a little bit, and I can't say that I really got it and really got a clear vision of how this is so much better than all the other social networks and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, did you get that it's really bigger and better and more useful than everything else that's out there?
Yeah, it's different. Facebook, I still use that, of course, for socializing. For the Google Plus, there's two main features, which are the circles, so you can identify different groups.
Right.
Which makes it very easy in business and so on to make sure that when you send something out, it's not everybody that's listening to it all at the same time. You can actually segregate that, which helps to separate your business and your personal life. So your boss doesn't see the pictures of you at the party last weekend, right? So. Right.
Although, okay, yes, go on. Sergey will know.
Yeah, maybe.
We all seem to have a knowing laugh on that one without saying a word.
maybe he's busy too. So the Google Hangout seems to be the part that everybody is having a lot of fun with. Obama just did a Google Hangout. A Google Hangout is like a video conference that can be broadcast live. So a forum like this that's interactive. So Obama just did that last week. Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama did one.
I saw some of that one. Yeah.
So it's becoming somewhat of a broadcast medium, so kind of like a speaker's corner or a soapbox for your business. And there's a lot of companies that have picked up on that. And now that Google TV is coming out, a lot of people are trying to build on that to be able to be found for what they're looking to be able to do, to show the world of what they can offer. So kind of like a personalized shopping channel, so to speak, for what you can do.
Well, it's almost like I'm starting to get it now that this Hangout is almost like the new paradigm for any kind of TV channel or even a TV show or just and it's not just TV, because TV is a one-way medium, and this is all interactive on the internet.
Yeah, it's kind of like taking WebEx and GoToMeeting and putting it onto Facebook, along with Twitter and Skype and a whole bunch of other things, because YouTube is being connected with it, Gmail is being connected with it. That's why they call it Google Plus, because it's basically everything that's in Google that's coming to one. So that you have this ideal world for small, medium-sized businesses where you don't have to log into multiple things all in the morning.
Yeah.
You can log into one thing, have everything searchable in one place, and it's all subsidized with advertising dollars from analytics. So it's replacing, like our core business with Vizzico is to save companies up to 70% on their cost of email with Google Apps. And there's also an Office suite that is also inexpensive to be able to have that's web-based as a comparison to Microsoft. So that's where we started about 4 years ago. We were actually in the prior program to the reseller program as the referral program prior to that. What we're looking to be able to do is to help small, medium-sized businesses to be able to reduce their costs of communications, computing, and their online marketing, like inbound marketing you can do from the internet, is what our real goal is with Vizzico.
Okay, so when you say that you've got a reseller agreement, so what are you reselling exactly, and what, like, for the audience of small to medium-sized business owners out there, just in very specific, concrete terms, how can they benefit from Vizico?
Yeah, over 4 million companies have already moved over from Microsoft Exchange or other email platforms to Google's, which you can save up to 70% on your cost of email. And there's an Office suite along with calendar, messaging, and now Google Voice and Google Chat, so that you can from one place have everything you need for your small business in a much more cost-effective way than the other tools that are in the marketplace.
And it's all cloud-based?
Yeah, it's all cloud-based, yeah.
Okay. All right. And
in dealing with Vizico, what is the major benefit there for local companies and or international? And is it just companies?
Well, from the business side of things,
yes.
Because our team has 13 years in the IT professional business with many brand name customers.
Yes.
RIM, AMD, many brand name customers. Mm-hmm. And our team was basically doing soup to nuts, one-stop shopping, multi-jurisdiction for anything that was basically Linux and open source, okay, and not any particular type of distro. So what that meant was, when Google came along with their cloud computing, a lot of their software is Linux and open source based. Mm-hmm. So we're well positioned to be able to help companies in that area. Mm-hmm. And what defines us is a lot of the other companies will help you adjust your email or a certain type of thing as a systems integrator of where we would take a look at it, a holistic approach for a small, medium-sized business is more of a solution as a provider of solutions rather than just certain pieces in certain areas type thing.
Yes. Now you mentioned about somehow the concept of a co-op comes into play here somewhere. How does that fit?
Yeah, we were fortunate enough in the early days to have an agreement where we were able to sell into all of the different markets other than the no-go zones for the United States, Cuba, Iran, and so on. So we looked at this from a business point of view, an altruistic point of view. From a business point of view, customers can renew every year with Google for the licensing of the different solutions. And with the Google Plus for Business coming out very soon, there's already Ford and Dell and so on that are already in those pilots that are doing really well with it and have decided they're going to go forward with using this inside their company and as an interface to their customers for customer service and so on. So what we're looking to do is to reduce the churn. So customers wanting to renew with somebody else rather than us, which is happening with resellers around the world as this grows very fast. So what we wanted to do is we came up with this concept of what if in the early days of Microsoft it was set up so that the customers actually had ownership, just like you would with a credit union, where you get a dividend at the end of the year and all the customers actually have ownership. Mm-hmm. And then you would take something like a WestJet model where all the employees actually own the company and meld the two together.
Like all the stakeholders, right?
Yeah. So it would be in their best interest, like you said, like a co-op, and take the best of breed, best of fit of those models. What we believe this will do for a culture that would be conducive to longevity and serving everybody is we're a Canadian company, so we're geopolitically neutral. Canada's very healthy, so as a brand, as a Canadian company, we're looking to be able to help bridge different markets together by doing this, and then people can say, hey, I have a say in this, and I get a bit of a return. So we get a loyalty type of thing happening. But it can also do a couple other things that are very interesting. A lot of small and medium-sized businesses we find to move over to Google, there's a bit of a challenge because you have to make a capital investment to be able to change over. Mm-hmm. So with that, it can take up to a year before you'd break even or start to see the savings. Mm-hmm. So we're working with customers to be able to amortize those costs, because there are costs mostly, to be able to get them over to that. So our ultimate goal is to make it so that you would just sign up, tell us what your bills are that you pay now, we would take over what those actual bills are, and we would pay them and seamlessly in the background move you over as an efficiency expert to the new model where you would decrease your costs, increase your productivity and your sales. Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to do, is reduce the barrier of entry and the friction. So that's why we came up with the credit union and WestJet type of model to be able to put together. So it would increase the retention. So imagine if Microsoft in the early days was done like this, they wouldn't necessarily have to go out and try and do a hostile takeover of Yahoo to try and catch up with Google's model, which is making what they do free, which is not even really competing. In the dictionary, you have to have the same business model to compete. So if they just make what they do free and they just use advertising to subsidize that and use that to garner the analytics. So what we want to do is to look out into the future. And since people are starting to say, oh, Google's going to become the next Microsoft, probably even bigger, and it's getting scary and so on. Well, imagine if all the companies and businesses out there that are small, medium-sized business, what type of lobbying power there would be, and we could create a financial institution within this to not only help them with those things, but it would create a buying group where 85% of the world economics and employers are small, medium-sized business. So this 99%, we are the 99%, the Occupy Wall Street stuff. Well, last time I looked at math, and I dropped out in grade 9, so I don't have a lot of math history, but that's pretty much the majority. So if we take that feeling of what's going on right now and work with small, medium-sized businesses, we can create a lobbying group that gives them buying power and much more lobbying power than the Fortune 500 and the governments of the world very fast with this catalyst, which is everything going from whatever it is now to Google. And then even with Google, you'd have a lot of lobbying power because you'd probably be their largest customer based on the success of this.
And you could use that concept not just for Google, but for anything, for hydro, bulk purchases of electricity, of internet access, of
ideally
everything.
Yes, yeah. Ideally, that's what we like to do, and a bit of an MLM at the same time, where we have an affiliate program where people can make money if they're interested in this. The customers, the employees, the partners. So yeah, it becomes a new model where we take the best breed, best of fit, rather than just quarterly earnings. For somebody that has a mutual fund that's retired, that's complaining about Walmart and how people are being, treated there, but are coming home with bags full of stuff from Walmart at the same time while they're buying that with the money from their mutual fund that is driving Walmart to those quarterly earnings without some of the other things that people are concerned about. So it'd be interesting to do this because it only take about 25% roughly of the 85% to outweigh the Fortune 500 and the Walmarts of the world. So imagine as a small, medium-sized business, if you could actually have, and the numbers are there for it, more buying power than Walmart. So that means you could, in effect, offer things for the same price or less with a better experience. So what we're hoping is that the continuation of this would be, the pay it forward would be that the small, medium-sized businesses would actually take the new savings from this reducing your costs with the new tools and your productivity, your sales with social marketing on the internet, with Google Plus for Business, Google Apps, YouTube, and so on, and pass that on to the consumer. So they could actually give a better experience and less cost than the big box stores. And the numbers are there to do that.
Plus, I think the opportunity is there because with people feeling alienated from the financial system, which is the underlying cause of the Occupy movement, well, with a system like this, there's no need to feel alienated because you are now a stakeholder in the system.
Exactly. This is actually a plan, the formation of a plan, and it can be crowdsourced because this will take on a life of its own. Small, medium-sized businesses will do crazy things like put money into a local softball team or give money to the Salvation Army. Large corporations really don't have a way, unless it's a PR campaign, to deal with certain types of things like that. It's not as based. It's much more decentralized. It's much more holistic in its approach. It's a much better ecosystem, so that there'd be much more of a balance at the end of the day. And I do believe that, like you said, it'd be better. We privatized a lot of things around the world, and access to internet now is access to education, access to health, access to having a voice on this planet. So I believe they're more of a utility model. Back to the days when we bought, municipal bonds, and that's how we got our water, that's how we got our electricity, and so on. So I believe the pendulum needs to swing back that way. And there's lots of places to make money for the wants and desires versus the needs, so that we can still have people that want to, capitalize on things that are not necessarily a necessity in life. And that way people will be a bit more comfortable with the system. We just need to strike a balance. As Canadians, of course, they say, why are you guys so good at being able to build? Canada, actually, Toronto is the largest producer of mobile applications in the world, and Google's making a big presence up here. So it's kind of the hopping point to go to the rest of the world. So there's a good mix here to be able to make things happen as a catalyst. So based on based on people's response and people getting involved with us, we want to make that into reality as a plan to be able to help, to actually change the dynamics of the market today, that makes it a little more balanced in redistribution of wealth around the world.
So with Vizico, it seems that it's taking big business, making it scalable so that small business can collaborate with with everyone in their community or circle, and everyone can profit at least a little.
Yeah, absolutely. And Linux and open source, that type of thing, crowdsourcing, these different open models.
Yes.
We still have big brands as customers, and it's great to have their participation too, because it's kind of like a Robin Hood type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So they will never outnumber the buying power and the lobbying power of the small, medium-sized business once this is put together. Because I went to go join a local chamber of commerce.
Yes.
And they said their mandate was to help small, medium-sized business. And when I found out that 85% of the world's economy is small, medium-sized business, I asked what have they done to be able to do that? And they said they were not able to effectively do that. So I was really concerned about that. I'm sitting there going, actually upset. I'm going, but if you already have the buying power, why are you crying in your beer over over the Fortune 500 or certain families around the world that are behind corporations and stuff? Why not form a plan to form a co-op and a buying group? So I totally agree with what you said. This will end up doing things like Google. When you switch to Google, one of the altruistic parts of this is they are carbon neutral at all their server farms, and they're a big investor in green stuff. You go to google.org or just put in Google, Google Green, and you will find that they're doing incredible things for alternative energy to help the world have cleaner air, cleaner food, cleaner water. And that's really why I like the cloud computing and working with Google, because as a small, medium-sized businesses increase their business and decrease their costs, they're also decreasing their carbon footprint at the same time.
So this is a great way, because people who are maybe a little bit upset about the government, rejecting Kyoto or not able to come up with plans to reduce the carbon footprint. Well, this is an opportunity for people not to have to rely on the government. They can, through their own actions, through their own purchases, they can deal with the environmental issues on their own.
Yep, and things like green energy, power, micro green energy in different communities and stuff can be set up with this buying power. They don't have to wait for large corporations that are centralized to be able to try and bring these things out and market them. They can be tested and run and brought into the market because of the will of and the lobbying and the buying power of this group.
Andrew, I'm wondering here, you spoke about small business, medium business. And there's a good percentage of the world, locally here and internationally, that's not in business yet. So they're students, yet students are still consuming to some extent. And when we look at education, in terms of any of the universities or colleges, there one is being trained to be self-sufficient in some type of commercial application, arts or what have you, universities. You've got an affiliation with one of the universities too, don't you?
Yeah, I had the good fortune of meeting some people down in Costa Rica.
Yes.
There's a university called Earth University. It's been around for 20 years. It's a foundation, and it's to teach much more than just agriculture, but that's the main focus. But entrepreneurs, to create the next Dalai Lama or Gandhi with Noam Chomsky sprinkled on top, right? So that's
so it's like student entrepreneurs almost.
Yeah,
it's not about big business; it's about sustainable and.
Yeah, actually businesses that even thrive, so past sustainable, right?
Yes.
Because to get a zero sum right now, we're already a deficit. So really you need people to shoot above that. Some people will get there or below, but some will shoot above, so we can get a balance as far as what's happening with our ecosystem and our economy. So that's why we call it Vizico. VIZZ stands for new and visionary, and eco is eco, as in economy or ecosystem.
Yes.
Is what we came up with to be able to identify this. But yeah, with education, I did a talk down at Earth University called "The Lunatics Need to Take Over the Asylum. No Ritalin, please."
It's encouraging.
And save the humans, because we're endangered species.
So how would we do that?
Well, saving the humans. I personally believe that I'm probably the last human on the planet. because based on what everybody else is doing, from what I've seen, you're hiding 4 or 5 planets out there, and I'm just being punked, right? Nobody's telling me this, right? You're all aliens by the way you're treating this planet, right? So, I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not a, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, I just want really good neighbors, and I want clean air, clean food, clean water, and I'm actually fairly self-centered. I just want those things for myself, right? But it requires a group because we co-create and we all share this place type stuff, right?
Yes.
So the lunatics need to take over the asylum is...
That's really the students, though, isn't it?
It is.
And it's the adults that are prepared to be students again as well.
Well, one of the things we can do with this buying group is to sit down with a university, like Earth University, it's altruistic, and say, hey, why don't we just take the student council, and instead of paying for dances and whatever's left over for beer that other people don't see, right, and drinking that, well then how about we actually ask you guys, what would education look like and this institution look like if you hired the teachers, if you ran this place, if you had the budget, what would that look like? And at the end of it, my dream is, which will come to reality, is we actually give them that money, and then they actually run education. They transform it into what it needs to be, because education today, it doesn't serve where we're going in the future. And if you got billionaires at the age of 22 with Zuckerberg and so on, Mark Shuttleworth, Shuttleworth, sorry. If you have these billionaires at these early ages, Skype came from MIT, and so did Wired magazine. Skype got sold for what, $8 billion, just a few $1 billion, right? How come you still have to pay for tuition to be able to go to MIT? If that
It sounds
came
like
from
you're
there.
speaking of an altruistic economy. And normally when we think of economies, we think of capitalism or communism or socialism, and all of those don't seem to have worked. And my experience is when we're looking at altruism, no one's ever put that into an economy.
Well, I believe it's just because so many things are disconnected, right? You have investors that have quarterly returns on their mind, and they've already out of the system, and they're heading for a plot with a little headstone, right, type stuff someday, right?
Yeah.
But until then, they want to enjoy their life, so they're not necessarily concerned with long-term future or changing things. They like to keep things status quo, and that's the majority with baby boomers in the financial market with mutual funds. So that's why we have what we have now. So that's why these alternative models, especially with education, where you say, let the students actually take over. Let's see what that would actually look like, right? And what would that transform into? I think that would be an interesting experiment, and I don't know of any place that's actually been done yet.
Do students have to be limited to being young?
Oh, absolutely not. Earth University has very, young students to very old students from all over the place, and half of them are completely, subsidized. The other half can be very rich or, middle class. It's a very interesting, mix, because they're from all over the world and all different type of, financial and language and cultural backgrounds. So it's like the United Nations. Right, at a very early age, right? But they all have smiles on their faces and twinkles in their eyes, and they believe that they can actually change the world. So it'd be magical to literally just write them a check and here you go, and let's see what they would come up with for education.
Well, you have that twinkle in your eye. What can we do to help you and Vizico?
Well, we're looking for people as we scale up to be able to help us as far as helping people to be able to go Google.
Yes.
Right? And if you have a background in social business platforms, cloud computing, that type of thing.
Yes.
Of course, customers that would be interested in this, lobbying group co-op, save the world type of thing. Taking over
Serve
the power.
the world. Yeah.
To serve themselves, so to speak.
Yes.
And then we're also looking for small investors. We raised $1 million for friends and family to get to this point. But now that Google Plus has really taken off, we didn't actually plan for this rapid growth that's about to happen about mid-2012 as that gets launched.
Okay.
So we're looking for that. We're also looking for people that would be affiliate marketers / MLM. It's kind of a mix.
Yes.
The other thing we're going to do is, instead of being a value-added reseller or a systems integrator, what we want to do is actually be a franchise model. Because
How would
that's
that work?
a franchise model. Well, the word franchise is actually translated, it's French for freedom. Is actually,
I didn't know that.
It's the translation. And the emerging markets really, really like franchises, because a lot of money stays local. And people get to be entrepreneurs, but they've got a plan that actually works. right? So it brings the ability to have a feeling of ownership and pride, and to not have the ceiling of what a job would do, and to bring in more income. So in the emerging markets, to get this be a global event, because India and China and so on are becoming huge,
Yes.
350 million people here.
Yes.
There's
And the uptick for integration is exciting and just exciting if we work with that.
Yeah. It'd be nice to see the franchise model to get out there, and then it would scale financially, it would scale as a system, and then you'd have that thing. Because with cloud computing, one of the main reasons why we came up with this model of a WestJet / credit union co-op, put it all together, everybody has ownership and a say in this and a stake, is because the biggest issue with cloud computing is you're going to give your information and everything to somebody out there. That's what the cloud is, which makes people nervous. And with Google, that information is stored with them, and it's a US-based company. And with a vice president of Google in marketing in Egypt, using the social business platform and getting on 60 Minutes and professing, I took down a dictator of 30 years in 18 days, that might create some issues, some challenges for Google to reach the emerging markets.
So Vizzico is really the solution for it.
As a geopolitically neutral Costa Rican / Canadian company, we would really like to be able to help be the Switzerland of cloud computing, so to speak.
Right in Canada, they say.
Right.
Only in Canada, perfect.
Right. So we'd like to be able to do that so that people could sleep at night, because they'd like to store their data locally, and they'd like to be able to have access to the source code, the software itself. But with Google, that's not available just yet. So we're working on a plan to be able to do that. The technology's there, and then when we take the analytics, the actual data that needs to be sanitized, the stuff that doesn't make people not sleep at night, and take that and give it to Google so they could continue to do what they do best, because they don't necessarily want to make software. They don't necessarily want to provide services, but they need to be able to have those listening sources to be able to place advertisements that are very relevant, that they can make money on, which subsidizes the whole thing. So we're looking at being like the stick man, in offshore, the person in between.
The kind stick man. It's really, and the considerate one, or the altruistic one that's actually making things happen.
And in Canada, we're like Switzerland or Costa Rica. Nobody gets nervous about us, because at the end of the day, we don't really have an army or anything, right? And by nature, if you ask the kids today, they don't know a lot about the past. They say Canadians are very good at the internet and research in motion and many other things, and infrastructure and banking, because we're somewhat socialist. But they mean socialist, of course, in a bit different way. Right? So I believe it's about striking a balance, just like Canada did by being in this bubble with this world economy, where we seem to have weathered it very, very well in this little bubble compared to other countries. So we're looking to be able to give that energy of Costa Rica, of Canada, to the world through this best of breed, best of fit, best practices, through this buying group, to be able to affect rapid change.
Wonderful.
Well, maybe we should knock on wood about the bubble that we're in, this good fortune that we've had over the last couple of years. But it sounds like with this kind of business, with this kind of technology, that it may be possible to reduce costs and increase opportunity for people all over the world, that will kind of make traditional economic recessions just
a thing of the past.
It's a win-win-win, right? It's like a beautiful mind, right? It's not a zero-sum game anymore, right? And that's what we really need to do. The digital world has created this 0-1 game, right? So I believe that we can take the fat out of financial transactions, collecting tax, and advertising, analytics. Those are really the main things. Everything else is going to zero, right? So imagine a place like Brazil, where Sao Paulo has a huge population, very densely, and they're growing rapidly, or India, or China. Imagine if you were able to be able to say to them, what if we gave away free Apple iPhones or free Google phones or free Blackberries, right? Because everybody wants them, especially in the emerging market. They're a status symbol, right? And everybody, when we're born, we come out of the womb and we must communicate, right? We must yell and scream and look around and stuff and so on, right?
Communicate with the world, then.
It's what we do. But could you imagine if everybody got, and Google came up with this quite some time ago, is the hardware would actually be free and the services would be free, because reducing the cost of collecting tax and the cost of a transaction and the cost of analytics
Yes.
means that you could really take out the fat and make sure everybody has that infrastructure in place, and it would help the economy of the world. It was stimulated.
Yes.
I had the good fortune of meeting Mohammed Yunus, the Nobel Peace Prize winner that created the bank in Bangladesh.
Yes.
Microloans.
Grameen, yeah.
Yeah, Grameen Bank. They actually, instead of buying cows, what they found with a $150 loan that goes out to 98% women is that they bought cell phones.
Yes.
And what they did was is they had a cell phone, and in that town, because India is very, is very dispersed.
Yeah, and community oriented, still to their local villages.
Right. So what would happen is they would give market information to the local guy that has a crop or fisherman or whatever, and he would make 12-fold more money because of that market information.
Women are such great managers.
Yeah. So it's grown like crazy. So we're going to have a bit of that model too at the same time, because we would like to be able to provide something we've been working on for quite some time, is a phone that actually uses a 1 gigabit ultra-wideband wireless network. So that actually is free spectrum, has been around for a long, long time. So what that would mean is this device, this phone you would have that would also be a computer and so on, would actually use the other devices as the majority of the network. And you could use wireless electricity. There's also a way to be able to use frequencies and spread spectrum to actually heal you instead of give you cancer.
Yeah.
So we can actually take a lot of the issues that there is with what we built for communications today and decentralize it, right? Because if you're actually to send an email today or to make a phone call, because of billing systems and the way things are set up, 73% of the time, it's going to go multiple distances to get to the very next door neighbor. Like literally here, if you're going to talk to somebody next door.
And silly tariffs that just serve geopolitical needs rather than human needs.
It's not actually very efficient. So imagine these phones actually being able to communicate among the phones themselves. And because of supercomputing, because you've got such a big pipe, and the devices are getting so powerful, you could make it so that the units themselves,
it becomes a global node.
Yeah, like the SETI program. You can use shared resources, right, between them. Because how often, like you're not using your phone right now, and it's got a 1 gigahertz processor.
So why not let it be part of the infrastructure?
Exactly. You have your dedicated resources and use them when you want on demand. But when they're not being used, why not make the storage space and the computing power available to everybody else?
We're all part of the universal pipe.
Yeah, it's more cost effective.
How exciting. Where can people reach you, Andrew?
Andrew.Greig, Greig, at Vizzeco, VIZZECO.com.
Awesome.
Perfect. Okay. All right, Andrew. Great to have
I
this
don't know if
conversation.
you've ever heard this, and I didn't think of this before with you, but you're coming across as a gentle visionary, and I find it comical. But just for what it's worth.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you for being a gentle visionary.
Okay. So let's take a quick break. We're going to come back with Stephanie Titus-Andrews right after this as Liquid Lunch continues. And we're going to have a great conversation with her. We'll be right back.
Lowering out your sails, sail expeditiously. Strong winds on the starboard encroaching. Now the schooner was a sailboat, 3-masted, 40 ton. She was 74 foot by 18 men, 'cause she loves everyone. Sweet potpourri of Polynesian fun. She panacea on the California run. Oh yeah.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Titus-Andrews from CreatedToExcel. If you're a woman going through divorce, we offer coaching and mentoring services that can help you leave the bitterness behind and move on. Please contact me at 647-928-4728, or you can reach me on the web at www.CreatedToExcel.ca.
When the wind winds its way through the fields of play, there's no place on earth that I would rather be than a green lantern wasting the stream of my fancy by a golden meadow with a girl named Nancy singing hey ho, and away we go. Donkey riding, riding on a donkey. Hey ho, fast and slow. Traveling can be perilous when it's double Dutch and nothing at all. La 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 la. Turn the leaves of a book, hear the pleas of a princess. She said, help me, Curdy, save me from the goblins. Doesn't seem strange at all when now and then I recall those little feet tripping, skipping ever so lightly, singing hey ho, and away we go. Donkey riding, riding on a donkey. Hey ho, fast and slow. Traveling can be perilous when it's double Dutch or nothing at all. Ah, la 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 la. Yes, there's a dandelion kingdom. Yes, I guess that's where I belong. Yes, yes, to the dandelion king. I'm gonna sing my dandelion kingdom song. There's a dandelion kingdom. That's where I belong. To the dandelion king, I'm gonna sing my dandelion kingdom song.
Back here on Liquid Lunch, and we are welcoming Stephanie Titus-Andrews here. And Stephanie, great to have you on the show.
Nice to
Welcome,
be here.
Stephanie.
Nice to be here.
Now you've, I guess you've had quite a journey, right?
I sure have. Yes, I
And
have.
and you're here to, well, your company's called CreatedToExcel, right?
That's right. That's
So
correct.
maybe we could start with that. What's the real purpose of the company?
The purpose of the company is to empower women, giving them an injection of hope, direction, and strength. That's my mandate. So I hope to do that through speaking, writing, and offering coaching, which is something I also do.
Okay, now is this for all women, or is this targeted at women who are in a particular circumstance?
Absolutely. It's for women going through divorce, especially if there was an abusive history with the relationship.
Right. Okay.
And it's just for women.
I prefer to work with women. I
Okay.
do know that there are men that are going through the same issue, but I prefer to work with women. I've coached men in the past, but I really do prefer to work with women.
Yes.
So it's a coaching methodology.
It's a
that you
coaching
use,
method.
right?
That's correct.
And what's the best point for women to come in and start to work with you? When they're still in the relationship, or?
Absolutely not. I will not work with a woman who's still in an abusive relationship because it's too difficult and it's
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
What I prefer is a woman who has left the relationship, and especially if there was abuse in it, and she is in a good space emotionally. So if she still needs counseling, she needs to get some counseling first, and then I can work with her.
I'm almost thinking that, you know, for someone who's in that situation, that's when they need the most help to, you know, being stuck in that situation and you don't even know how you're going to get out. I mean, is that why you're writing the book?
The book is a narrative of a person who is in a relationship that's abusive and her journey out of an abusive relationship. And then at the back of the book, there are going to be resources for women in Canada and the US to help them get to the stage of leaving, if that's something that they need help with.
Because isn't that, I mean, you know, I don't know exactly what your story is exactly, but isn't that really the most difficult, because you're in that relationship, you know there's something wrong, you know that, but you don't know what to do about it. That's like leaving is not just that easy, right? It's not easy,
and a lot of times it takes, when I actually left and went to a shelter, and when I got to the shelter, they say it takes between 9 and 12 times to leave. So women do know there's something wrong. They do attempt to leave, but usually go back because of finances, and that's usually the biggest hurdle. So with the book, and I also blog as well, I'm trying to let women know that there are resources out there for them to go and obtain when they leave, if they chose to leave, because the alternative is not really that great.
Okay, so we have now the book's not out yet, but we do have a picture of what the cover is going to be, which is right there. Water for the Journey, 156 Days to Freedom.
Yes.
Can you just tell us, I mean, that's a curious title. What's the inspiration for that?
The inspiration, initially I was going to call it Water for the Journey, only because I have a lot of references to water. The book is split up into categories. Each chapter, there's a section called Cup of Water. And I was initially just going to call it that, but then when I checked back how long it took me to leave, it was exactly 156 days. So I wrote a story based on my actual experience of the amount of time that it took me to leave. And I believe that planning your leave is really essential. If you don't plan and you leave really on an emotional high, I'm not necessarily saying it was a good emotional high, just on emotional high, usually you come back. So if you strategically plan, then you have more chance of success. That's how that name came around.
Okay, now is the book already written?
It's written.
Yeah.
It is written. I am in the process of re-editing it and sending it to my editor. I have a very short timeline that I'm working with, and I'm hoping that it will be out in May.
So just a couple more months.
A couple more months.
And what form will the book take? Is it going to be an e-book or a regular book or both? Or
it's going to be both.
Okay.
I will have a downloadable version, but because I have color pictures in the book, there will also be a hard copy.
Okay.
Speaking of color pictures, I noticed that you have a map to freedom. Is that right? Yeah, my new life map.
Right.
And how does that correlate to the 156 days to freedom? Can you sort of visually take us through it?
My new life map is my coaching program that I developed.
It's a great title, My New Life Map.
Yeah, I just thought my life map, but then it's like, no, you're actually starting a new life when you're leaving an abusive relationship. Everything's starting all over again. So it kind of ties in with the fact that both of them are supposed to give you some sort of freedom.
Yes.
So the book is 156 Days to Freedom, My New Life Map. You should, by the end of it, have mental freedom and emotional freedom. So the both of them, I would say, are leading towards some sort of freedom.
Event,
Yeah, that's correct.
That's actually an exciting concept. I mean, not just for people that might be kind of in a bad relationship situation, but sometimes just a bad situation in general, and you want to create a new life. Is this something that, not just women can use, but maybe even not just women who are in bad relationships?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I do have one section that I will attach the abuse factor into. And if there was no abuse, then I can leave that out. Mm-hmm. So I have 10 steps that I take people through from stop, drop, and roll. That's the point where they've left and it's like everything's on fire. So like the firemen say, stop, let's analyze, and then we can progress. We look into the finances, we look at the legal, the children, taking care of yourself, putting stuff into your mind that's helpful, and taking care of yourself, and emerging joyfully is the last part.
Wow. I'm just wondering, since you've been through this whole process, is there like maybe a fundamental misstep that women are taking that gets them into these bad relationships in the first place?
Mine is even a little more deep, because I actually went at it from a religious point of view. And as I was researching, because I came from a religious background, as I was researching, I realized that it is even more prevalent in the religious community. You
mean abusive relationships?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the misstep is that we don't nurture ourselves enough, and we don't listen to our intuition. So there's in the first chapter I said something like there were signs as big as billboards, and we ignore them, like the gut feeling, the hair on the back of your neck standing on end, all those things that, when you're following your intuition, you go, oh my gosh, run away. And we say, oh, it'll be okay, we can change him, and things will be fine. And that's a fundamental thing I find a lot of women say. Like, if you talk, there will be that common thread. I kind of felt, but. And that's something that I think that we do.
No, that's maybe a life's worth of learning to, listen to your gut sense of things, right?
Absolutely.
Because, and in particular, not just, religion is a big one, right? Because you buy into a religion. A religion tells you kind of what you should be thinking, or how you should be living, and you override your gut sense. And it's not just religion, but it's other things, right? School, family, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
What did you emerge from? What kind of wisdom or understanding did you emerge from after going through all this?
I realized that because I was in the church, that does not mean that God is bad. It means that someone just overstepped their boundaries. They went a little farther than they should have, than any human being should have, with their verbal onslaughts or the way they treated a person. And I emerged victoriously. I emerged happier than I thought I could have ever been at this point in my life. So it could have made me a very bitter person, but instead it made me a person who wants to help other people not get to that bitter place.
Now, what about somebody that's in a difficult situation right now, but they are, maybe in a religious background, and they buy into everything you're supposed to buy into, that, you only get married once, that it's a sin to divorce, or whatever, right? So they're dealing with that too. They're dealing with all this ideological mindset, and they're finding it very difficult to, even though they have their needs to get away or just to survive, right? But they have this ideological framework that they're locked into as well. Absolutely. What would you tell someone like that?
I was there too. And the most important thing that I learned from this is that children learn what they live. And especially if you have kids, they will pick up on a lot of the behaviors that they're exposed to. They are mirrors. So if you don't want to see that behavior carry on, because if a child is exposed to abuse, they will either abuse or be abused. Bullying has to find an outlet. And if it's not dealt with, if you don't address the situation, it's gonna continue. It's gonna constantly continue.
So what was your motivation from where you were to actually get through and make those changes?
I kept getting, the stress kept making me sick. And I thought, this has got to stop. Just before I left, I actually had an appendectomy, and it's a normal procedure that takes 3 days to heal. I was in the hospital for a week, and then I had complications and complications and complications. I ended up with a blood clot going towards my lung from an appendectomy, just because one thing after another, there was stress. So I had the appendectomy in December, and I didn't get the all clear till almost May. And throughout that time, I was planning, because when I was in the hospital, I was like, this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. And that was like the deciding factor, because I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and I could just see myself.
Did you do it by yourself, or did you have help?
I had help. I did. I enlisted the help of my children and my friends and family, and they were not surprised when I told them. My family said I had the patience of Job, so they were expecting me to have called it quits a long time prior. And I just kept going because I didn't, I had that thing in my mind. I didn't want to go have a divorce and all that stuff. And it was like, you know what? At the end of this, I might end up being the one that's the loser, because my health would just take me out probably.
How many children do you have?
I do have 3.
3? What ages approximately?
My oldest is 24,
Yes.
and I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old.
And when did all of this major transition occur?
It occurred 2.5 years ago.
My goodness.
And I am evidence of what I preach. The
Yes.
children learn what they live syndrome. My
Yes.
eldest daughter went into the same situation. So while I was leaving, I was working to help her get out of an abusive relationship. So while I was in the shelter, it was like, you know what? I'm not going to let another woman. I will do whatever I can to help
Yes.
women
That's strong
who have
motivation.
gone through situations like this.
How many times did you go back?
This was my 3rd time leaving. So I left twice before. And
How
when
long did you leave each time?
the first time I left, I was married for just over a year.
And you left for how long?
And I left for about a week. The second time.
And how was it coming back? And
There's
why did you
always-
go back?
Well, because I left on an emotional high, like I had said. I didn't take anything with me except for a little bit of clothing. My 2 children were still at home.
Yes.
And so I didn't have any finances or anything to sustain me. So I went back, and of
You went
course
back
there's
because you left on the high and it wasn't
yes,
sustainable.
that's right. And
All
I was
right.
staying with a friend.
And how did it go when you went back?
There was always, I'm so sorry, it wouldn't happen again. But if you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have done that. And there's always a but when there's the
justification.
That's exactly it, justification. The second time I left about 9 years ago, and my kids at the time were begging me not to go back because they were old enough at that point in time. And I didn't think I could financially sustain myself, even though I went to a shelter, even though the women were giving me options. And the third time, of
How
course,
long were you away?
I was away for almost a month.
For a month, and you still went back.
I went back.
How was it going back the second time then?
The second time, I went back with a determination that I wasn't going to cry anymore. So I was a little more, I don't know how to term it, but I had a little more backbone.
Yeah.
Not enough to leave and stay for a while, but I had enough that I wasn't going to let it make me cry anymore.
And did you cry?
I didn't cry until just before I was ready to leave, when I was in the hospital.
Oh, so the third time then was this 2.5 years ago.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So until I had my appendectomy, I did not cry.
Not even privately?
Nope.
Like,
I said, I'm not going to have this make me cry anymore. And then after that, a lot of floodgates opened, of course.
yeah.
So, for people, women listening out there right now, I mean, what state do they need to be in to benefit from coming to see you now?
They need to have left already. I can counsel on what to do in order to get there, but I will not be in the middle as they are leaving, especially an abusive relationship. I don't want any repercussions, because there could be some. They do need to have, I would say they should have some sort of counseling first. If they're fairly emotionally stable, then I will work with them as well. If they haven't had counseling, I'm just saying. As we're going through my process, I do have one specific step called Rocks to Pearls, where I do take them through all the different negative things that they've had shot at them and help them find some real good gems from those things. But I won't take a person who's left, last week. They need to have some things on their own in place.
And I guess they need to be ready to start to build their new life map, right?
That's right. They need to be ready to progress, as opposed to carrying around the luggage, which a lot of people like to carry. For what reason, I'm not really sure.
So now, for those women in that circumstance, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can contact me on the web at www.CreatedToExcel.ca, or they can contact me by phone, and if I don't answer, you can leave a message, please, at 647-928-4728.
And I guess they can check out that website as well, CreatedToExcel.ca.
That's correct.
And the book, I mean, is the book going to help women who are still in the relationship?
I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping that they can use it and see, you know what, I don't have to take this nonsense anymore. And I did write it from a religious perspective, but anybody can read it and get nuggets of truth from it. And I hope they can see that, you know what, when he says this to me, that's not really a really nice thing to say, and bolster themselves up so they can start a new
to make
life.
that transition out.
That's right.
Okay, so the book hopefully out in May, and
That's
I guess
correct.
people can just go to your website and get in touch with you and let you know that they want to get a copy when it's out, right?
Absolutely. I will be putting up a pre-order form, and I'm hoping to do a really huge campaign towards the end of April, because I will be having a lot of coupons and things like that they can have and utilize at the back of the book.
Okay, great. All right. Well, listen, thanks for coming in today and sharing your story with us. And we look forward to seeing the book in May. And again, people can check it out, CreatedToExcel.ca. Thanks, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good luck on your journey.
Okay then. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, come back in a couple of minutes with our political correspondent, Brendan O'Farrell. As Liquid Lunch hits the home stretch here on a Friday, we'll be right back.
Beautiful.
On the big old Trans-Canada Highway, I was hitchhiking my way back home. 18-wheeler bearing down goes by me, and once again I'm left here all alone. Well, I was leaving my own youth behind, I was leaving my sweet lover too. 'cause I was living out the dreams of Jack Kerouac back when I first laid eyes on you. Now I'm waiting for my ride to come. Hey mister, are you really slowing down? I'm on my way to a city gray, gritty smoke-filled steel mill town. Well, I met her on the streets of Winnipeg, on a dead-end street that we once knew. Panhandling for change, deranged, and higher than a kite I flew. Thank you, sir, I'm much obliged. By the way, can you spare me $1 or $2? Seems I left my wallet and my watch, my heart on Portage Avenue. Come on, boys. As the years go tumbling down, like autumn leaves wet and cold lying dead upon the ground. Working high atop a crane in the mill, I see Winnipeg in my mind's eye, I guess I always will. She wrote me letters for a long, long while, but I guess my heart was not so tried and true. 'Cause I was living out the dreams of Kerouac way back when I fell hard for you.
We're back here on Liquid Lunch, hitting the home stretch, and we have Brendan O'Farrell, ThatChannel's political correspondent, and always great to have you here on the show, Brendan.
It's great to be back.
Welcome, Brendan.
So now, what are we talking about today? Are we going to look at the provincial election that was last year and kind of deconstruct that?
Well, yes, briefly at least. I would just want to say that since I was last here, we had a provincial election in October, and well, I'll just say that Dalton McGuinty was massively underestimated.
Okay. Well, he did win again and got a majority, right?
A minority.
It's a minority?
Yep.
See? You see what? This is why we need to deconstruct it today. Well, now, wait a sec. Didn't I just see something like yesterday or this week that he's going to seek the leadership again? Are they having a leadership review already, or is there talk of it already?
What do you mean? Like,
well, I thought I just saw it at one of those subway, like
those
displays.
one of those subway displays that I find go by too quickly and can only read half of them sometimes.
That's true.
So what did the subway display say?
I thought it said something like Dalton McGuinty will seek a third term. I don't know.
maybe it said he was going to seek a fourth term or a third term, or was going to stick around for the long haul, which doesn't surprise me. One thing pundits often get wrong about Dalton is how long he'll stick around for. Some predicted he'd actually call it quits before last October's election, and then he stuck it out. And then once we had October's election, some started predicting he might call it quits at some point soon.
Yeah.
So if the headline ended up saying Dalton beginning to stick it out for the long term, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, he just got elected, but I guess as it's a minority government, they could be outvoted at any time.
They could be outvoted at any time. They're one seat away from a majority, however. So it would take a big concerted effort and conscious effort, on the part of the Conservatives and the NDP to say, now we're going to make extra sure to outvote old Dalton. Otherwise, he should be safe. However, nobody expected until around September or October that Dalton McGuinty would ever get a third term. It was supposed to be Progressive Conservative leader Tim Hudak's turn to govern, but he blew a big lead.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons was he talked about foreign workers and that didn't help in the GTA when there's lots of immigrants who didn't like that use of that terminology.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think maybe two people. I think Ontario traditionally has tended to vote the opposite of who was ever in power federally. Right?
Yes, and so therefore history was on the Liberals' side. The Conservatives didn't take that into account. The fact that voters, after the federal election that we covered quite a lot last year, after it voted in a Conservative majority, with the deciding factor being so many seats for the Conservatives in Ontario, that did, a couple months later, seem to make voters reluctant to hand power to the provincial Conservatives and have Conservatives in power at all levels of government, including at the municipal level in Toronto, which Rob Ford made voters in Toronto particularly reluctant to hand Conservative power for voters in Toronto to hand power to Conservatives at all three levels of government.
Mm-hmm. Well, it strikes me still as odd that despite the fact people seem to be complaining about Conservative policy, whether it be from Rob Ford in Toronto or Stephen Harper in Ottawa, that they would vote Conservative. And I guess that didn't happen provincially, and yet they took Dalton's majority away from him.
Yes. Now, keep in mind that Dalton's majority was taken away from him from outside Toronto, where there was already two levels of Conservative government. He lost his majority because of a Conservative sweep in southwestern Ontario, and a bit of an NDP sweep in northern Ontario.
Okay. All right. Well, let's. Can we shift gears a little bit?
Sure.
To the U.S. election, because
Sure.
that seems to be the big news these days. And how come Ron Paul's not winning as a Republican?
Because he, as much as many would like him to win, many libertarian leading people, he doesn't quite fit the Republican establishment narrative. He's too libertarian on issues such as gay marriage, foreign policy, and marijuana and drugs, that those positions go against the Republican establishment. And while the Republican establishment itself is not so in these days, because the Republican establishment candidate Mitt Romney isn't so popular among Republican voters, a lot of Republican voters, including Tea Party or Republican voters, tend to still be, although they don't like the establishment of the Republican Party, they still tend to be socially conservative, not keen on legalizing marijuana, and because of their experiences with 9/11 and all the post-9/11 events, still believe in a muscular U.S. foreign policy as enacted under George W. Bush, such as stuff like invading the Iraq War. They want to feel secure, and therefore such conservative Tea Party voters I think don't want to have a non-muscular foreign policy as Ron Paul advocates, but instead to continue with the U.S.'s muscular foreign policy. And therefore, Ron Paul tends not to have enough votes in the primaries to win, but another anti-establishment candidate, Rick Santorum, who is a former senator from Pennsylvania and is also a scary social conservative, has made 3 major victories recently in Colorado, Minnesota, and Missouri, and upset the GOP race. And, well, some say that he'd be easier to be beaten by Barack Obama, but in my view, he'd be a worse president than Mitt Romney, and therefore kind of a bit of a risk that if he somehow would actually win the nomination and the presidency.
Okay, so who do you favor to win the Republican nomination?
Oh, well...
I know you're not really a Republican type of guy, but...
No, and for me, well, if it's to be most easily beaten by Barack Obama, that would be Newt Gingrich, but he's majorly faded after winning the South Carolina primary.
He's favored?
Favored. No, he faded.
He faded. Oh, okay.
He won South Carolina primary, then got creamed in the Florida primary, and hasn't been heard from since.
Oh, okay. All right. Who's going to win?
There's a slim chance that Rick Santorum, who, as I say, is really socially conservative, but has a certain blue-collar appeal for blue-collar workers, and is famous now for wearing a sweater vest. That seems to help him get primary votes, because he often wears a sweater vest during debates. So there's an outside chance...
Do you hear that, Stephen Harper? Okay.
Yeah, there's an outside chance that he gets the nomination, but I still think it will be Mitt Romney, the establishment candidate, who ultimately gets the nomination, even though it probably would be a big dramatic fight before he gets it.
All right. So you think Mitt Romney ultimately will win it?
Yes.
And then will he be able to beat Obama?
I doubt it.
Yeah. Is the U.S. ever going to become the country that they were always supposed to be, the champion of freedom, the constitutional, the country that's all about human rights and liberty? Do you think they'll ever get back to that, or is the U.S. finished as far as that's concerned?
I'm generally an optimist, so I believe that someday they will get back to that freedom and liberties. And I believe they're moving there slowly. Just in the upheaval of after the Bush years, it's hard to get back there.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with today, Brandon?
Well, sure. Good luck to all the NDP contenders for the NDP leadership race that's going on. I have no idea who's going to win that. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to see that, for the sake of democracy, that the federal liberals have begun to rebuild. They had in January what was considered a successful party convention where they elected a new president, made some constitutional amendments, and likely are underway to renewal, at least according to the media. And so good luck to the Liberals, good luck to the NDP, good luck to the NDP leadership contenders, and good luck to whatever ultimate Liberal leadership contenders are down the road whenever they actually start their leadership race.
I hope that Gerard Kennedy comes back somehow.
Me too.
Yeah, because I think he would have been perfect. Okay, Brandon, thanks for doing this today. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, how about bmtnbs@gmail.com for email. And if they want to see my blog, they can just type Polly Wally blog onto Google. POLIWOLLIBLOG.
Polly Wally blog.
Yep. It was a nice creative name I came up with a few years ago when I started doing it.
Sounds like a pollywog.
Yeah.
Polly Wally blog. Okay, Brandon, thanks for doing this, and we'll see you again soon.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Hilton, that's it for the show today. It was a great show.
Truly.
We had 4 fabulous guests, and
And the count up?
And the count up begins after the countdown.
I'm not waiting that long.
Okay. So thanks for doing this, and thanks everybody. We'll see you all on Monday for more Liquid Lunch right here on ThatChannel.com. See you then.
I met her in a seaside cafe, in a coastal town, quaint and tucked out of the way. I plunked my hard-earned money down. She snatched it up and stuffed it in her prissy gown. I'm with Maria, the sea and the sun. It's ecstasy, 'cause she loves everyone. Sweet Paparia of Polynesian fun. She panacea, and life has just begun. She asked if I could take her home. We'd sing and laugh and dance and never feel alone. So I purchased tickets for two, chartered a yacht and sailed from Honolulu. With Maria, the sea and the sun. It's ecstasy, 'cause she loves everyone. Sweet Paparia of Polynesian fun. She panacea on the California run. Oh yeah. Now I'm barely living on Broken Dream Avenue. The squalid great tenements all surround me, and there's something wrong. It's been 2 weeks since my bird has flown. Gonna fall down on my knees and Miss Maria, the sea and the sun. It's ecstasy, 'cause she loves everyone. Sweet Paparia of Polynesian fun. She panacea on the California run. Oh yeah. I met her in a seaside cafe, in a coastal town, quaint and tucked out of the way. Now I look for Marie, so pretty. On the big old Trans-Canada Highway, I was hitchhiking my way back home. 18-wheeler bearing down goes by me, and once again I'm left here all alone. Well, I was leaving my own youth behind. I was leaving my sweet lover too. 'Cause I was living out the dreams of Jack Kerouac back when I first laid eyes on you. Now I'm waiting for my ride to come. Hey mister, are you really slowing down? I'm on my way to a city gray, gritty smoke-filled steel mill town. Well, I met her on the streets of Winnipeg, on a dead-end street that we once knew.